Hi, my name is Christina Herrin and Manager of Health Policy at the Heartland Institute. Welcome to a Heartland exclusive interview with Amber Freed, mother activist and founder of SLC6A1 Connect. Thank you, Amber, so much for being here today and your willingness to share your story.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're really excited to have you. And if you could just start off and explain what inspired you to start SLC6A1 Connect, a little bit more about the rare disease and how it's impacting your family.
Sure. So I had twins in March of 2017. It was the absolute joy of my life. The second I heard those little babies cry, nothing else mattered to me. I just wanted to love them and to have the best life possible for them, and I promised to advocate for them always. Very early on, we noticed that Maxwell wasn't progressing like his twin sister Riley. He had strange behaviors. He was floppy. He couldn't hold up his head right. And it almost looked like he was trapped in his body. He missed every developmental milestone, and I went from doctor to doctor to doctor, and people told me I was crazy until I got in front of the right geneticist at Children's Hospital of Colorado. And he took one look at Maxwell and said, something is very wrong. He has a rare disease. There are 7,000 rare diseases. We're going to have to go through a lot of genetic testing in order to find out what's wrong and be prepared for the worst. I don't know if your little baby is going to live.
Yeah, well, that's extremely heart-wrenching to hear for any mother or any person. And, thank you again for just being on here and sharing that with us. So we know that with rare diseases, they're very difficult to find cures. And in general, the process to get a drug approved from lab to market takes on average, $2.9 billion and from 10 to 12 years. What's the status of a cure for this rare disease? And what do you see for the future of this rare disease?
Yeah, so when Maxwell was diagnosed, the doctors said, we know nothing about this rare disease. We have a 5-page article written from Denmark. He's one of 34. Nothing's ever going to be done. Go home and give him the best life possible. We can't even tell you how long he's going to live. They said they told me all of the things he couldn't do or wouldn't do. He probably would never speak. He was going to have a movement disorder like Parkinson's. And this condition was going to progress into a really debilitating form of epilepsy. And he was never going to recover. He was going to live his life in a vegetative state. It was at that moment my husband broke down and was bawling, and I grabbed his knee and I said, Mark, this is not true. We are going to figure this out on our own. The same day I went back to my job, my career that I passionately loved, being an equity analyst at Janus Henderson Capital. And I decided to cure this disease myself. I was never going to accept that diagnosis for my son. And if something could be done, I was going to fight until the absolute end for him. So, like I said, nothing was known about this disease. I started calling hundreds of scientists, just trying to find out next steps and what to do and how to address this. And very early on, I realized that this disease was a candidate for gene replacement therapy. There's just one gene in Maxwell's body that is not working correctly. And there is technology that's in clinic now treating other diseases that could also treat this disease. And one of the fastest things we realized was that his disease is not so rare. It made the testing panels in 2017. So prior to that, You intuitively can't be diagnosed with something that doesn't exist. And we are actually fairly prevalent. We're the 10th cause of autism, the 6th cause of epilepsy, and we play a role in many psychiatric disorders. What's misfiring in Maxwell's body is the most important inhibitory neurotransmitter. So if that's misfiring, you can imagine all of the bad things that happen. We found our scientist, we found the person we needed to speak to. He was nearly impossible to get a hold of. So I started sending him snacks via Uber Eats every single day until it was so weird he had to call me back.
Right.
He finally did call back and he said, I'd love to speak with you, but I'm going to be at a conference tomorrow. And I said, oh, how strange. I'm, always at conferences. We might be at the same one. Now, of course, that was a complete lie. I was sitting in my pajamas, hadn't showered for 3 days, a mess, crying that my son had this terrible disease, sleep deprived, trying to make things happen, so scared with fear I couldn't feel my arms. And he told me, and I took a red eye to DC and I just showed up. And there he was sitting in the front row of the National Institute of Health, getting ready to speak alone. And I just went and sat down next to him. And I said nothing because I didn't know what to say. And I didn't want to appear weird because I had already been pretty weird. But he turned to me and he said, hi, Amber. And I said, oh, hi, what a small world. And I said, dinner tonight? And he said, sure. 4 hours later, we had a plan to cure this disease together.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely incredible. And you have done so much in such a short period of time. I mean, let alone what nonprofits do, but you come from a completely different career field and jumped into this. And I just want to applaud you on that. I think it's phenomenal in what you have done. And your organization is drawing so much attention and bringing awareness to SLC6A1. And the process to make drugs is a long process. And it's a long process for diseases that are impacting millions. But like you mentioned, this is a rare disease, so it is different. What are some of the obstacles that you are seeing within this rare disease space right now?
Rare diseases are very, very tough because we fall into the category too rare to care. We don't have a high enough patient prevalence that makes us a good target for biotech interest.
Sorry about that.
No worries. We don't have a high enough prevalence that makes us a good target for biotech interest. Academics don't want to work on us because there's only one bucket of funding from the National Institute of Health for rare diseases. So there's this one bucket, 7,000 rare diseases. So divide by 7,000. And then within each of those 7,000 rare diseases, there are subcategories. It is so highly competitive that it's nearly a non-starter to obtain government funding. All of the funding for scientific advancement falls squarely on the shoulders of parents fighting for their children. And I think it's extremely important to emphasize the statistics of rare diseases. 1 in 10 Americans are affected by a rare disease. We are actually, when you think about rare diseases as a whole, they affect America greatly. And 50% of all rare diseases affect children. And only 30% of those children will live to see their 5th birthday. We are fighting for children that have absolutely no voice and no other option than what we're developing. So for us, we are developing a gene replacement therapy.
Right.
The all-in cost to develop a gene replacement therapy is between $4 and $7 million. We have raised $2 million in 18 months, and that's enough to establish that it works in mice. We have proof of concept, but our next obstacles are paying for toxicology, getting through the FDA, having a hospital host a clinical trial, and all of the liability associated with that falls on the patient organization. And something that's very important to point out is that the cost is so high for us today, but that's the way it works for any new technology. Once we establish the recipe for doing this, so many diseases after us can piggyback, and the cost will come down astronomically. Just like, cell phones were 10 pounds and took up half your face in the 80s, and now we have iPhones.
Right. Yeah, I think it's really interesting too. You do mention that this gene therapy process is something that other diseases, not even just rare diseases, but diseases in general, and medical advancement in the future will utilize to create more cures. And I guess looking at the process to develop this gene therapy that is usable for Maxwell, what would you like to see the FDA do, or how can they help to streamline this process and make it easier, in the future for Maxwell to get access to this once it is developed and has passed toxicology?
There are a couple of things the FDA could do. One, rare diseases are not equivalent to well-known diseases. We have a very small patient population. We cannot have 100 patients enroll in a trial with a double-blind placebo. That is not even ethical to have a placebo where your DNA may or may not have been changed permanently.
Right.
There needs to be some way to streamline and fast track these trials for little kids, because they have no other choice. The other choice is either death or a life-limiting disability that will cause them to have no quality of life for the rest of their life. It is a huge cost to society. It makes family life miserable. It is a deep, deep sadness. The other thing the FDA can do, and I've seen this in the marketplace a lot lately, toxicology requirements are increasing for gene therapy. They're going the wrong way. So we're using a means to gene therapy that is well known. It's a virus that doesn't make humans sick called AAV9. It's being used in well-known drugs like Zolgensma. We have toxicology on this virus, and some of the feedback I've heard through public companies and anecdotally through other patient organizations is that the FDA is coming back and saying, that's great, you did these studies, we're requiring all these additional studies. Now, in the case of our organization, that cost falls on Amber Freed and her nonprofit directly, and it's millions and millions of dollars through contract research organizations. There's no way to get this done any cheaper or faster, and the FDA really needs to collaborate with the National Institute of Health or some of these well-known toxicology agencies to help parents that are running out of time for their children.
Right. I think it's really interesting too, because the FDA is, it seems like, at least in this instance and maybe others, that there's more, regulations being created for safety. And I mean, I just talking with you, I mean, we've talked a few times, and as a mother, I can tell that your children are obviously your number one priority, and safety for you and your husband and decision about Maxwell's health and your doctor's decision. I think that decision needs to fall under you, and you have the ability to know, after the initial toxicology, results, you have the ability to decide for your child what's best for them. And it really bothers me that FDA is almost standing in the way and creating more barriers in the name of safety, when in reality, I can't see you doing anything that would harm your children or that is unsafe for them. I mean, your biggest priority is their safety in their life and making sure that they're able to have a life. We can't wait 10 years for Maxwell to get this gene therapy. I mean, he needs it now, and we all want it to be safe for him. And so I think that you made another good point, that there has to be overlap and collaboration between FDA and NIH and the CDC and the, more private side of this, which is actual drug development. And it just seems like there's a huge disconnect overall. And I think that's really unfortunate. And to our listeners, I guess, do you have any final thoughts or takeaways that our listeners can go home with in regards to rare diseases or just drug development in general?
Yeah, I would love to leave everybody with the thought that rare diseases are only rare until they mess with the wrong mother. And
incredible.
Yes, like I said, we are fighting like the third monkey on the loading deck to Noah's Ark, and it just started to rain. We are not going to give up. We are going to meet our goal. We're severely behind our fundraising goal due to COVID, but this is where innovation comes from. When you attack a problem the same way you always have, let's just use Alzheimer's as an example. The way I think we've historically thought about Alzheimer's, we've debunked a lot of theories as to why we don't have any fabulous treatments coming to be. And it affects you when you're so much older that a lot of times the damage is done, or the faulty gene is already there and enacted, and there's very little you can do. I want to leave listeners with this thought. For our gene, one day we will have this on a newborn screening panel. Before parents leave the hospital, they are going to receive the results. Your child has this horrible disease. It's called SLC6A1. We can give them gene therapy before they leave the hospital, and your child will never become symptomatic. It is the breakthroughs in these rare diseases where you happen upon things that affect much larger diseases, and that's how innovation happens. So we just recently established a large link between SLC6A1 and Parkinson's. Imagine that our gene therapy is able to help adults with Parkinson's, and we can get them treated as children so they never go on to develop Parkinson's. And the amount of lives and heartache that would save. The story of Maxwell Fried and the Fried family has really transcended, my little family in Denver, Colorado. And we have the opportunity to impact a multitude here.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think I've been to many, many healthcare conferences, and I've heard very high level discussions about gene therapy. And I think your segment right there of, a minute and a half broke it down in a way that I've never heard it explained, that we will have an opportunity in the future to use this, to cure more diseases and cure them right as, a baby is born, and be able to see that. And I think that is so incredible. And that's what we're talking about here. And I think it's just really important for folks to know that our goal is for FDA to be a bridge to innovation and not a barrier. And right now, I just don't know that that's the case in every instance. So thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today. And I really appreciate your insight on this issue. And what is the best way for our audience to stay up to date on Maxwell's progress and the organization as a whole? Oh,
I would love for people to follow our story. There are a couple of ways. Our website is www.milestonesformaxwell.org. He also has a GoFundMe under Milestones for Maxwell. I update the GoFundMe as a blog, so everybody can stay up to date that way. We're on Facebook under SLC6A1 Connect. That's another way to stay up to date. We have so many Facebook followers, so many birthday fundraisers to help raise awareness. You can set your Amazon account to your Amazon Smile account to SLC6A1 Connect. And I would love for people to follow our story and also become involved, because I'm a big person in positive visions and I'm a large person of faith. And as soon as we have this disease cured, I am planning a gigantic party in Denver with a DJ and every single person. And I actually want Vanilla Ice to DJ because I'm a fan. And I am inviting every single person that was involved in helping me, and it is going to be the biggest night of celebration because we just helped kids' lives, and we are going to impact futures that come after us. So I just appreciate everybody getting behind our cause.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And we will make sure to link the websites that you mentioned below and any other relevant information for y'all to stay up to date. So Amber, thank you so much for being with us today and taking time to talk with me.
Well, thank you. Have such a great day.
You too.